Grew up on a dairy farm in Holland, a tiny little country that fits about 4 or 5 times in the state of Wisconsin. And we have 80 million people, so it's very crowded versus the 5 million that we have here in Wisconsin. So that makes land very expensive. And if you like cows and you want to do a little bit more and are driven and want to expand, it's impossible to do that in Holland. Well, if you like cows, you go to Wisconsin, right?
Well, my brother, he worked for a big farm in Wisconsin. He said if you want to farm, you have to stay in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is the dairy state, and so that's why we looked around a little bit, and we ended up about 5 miles from here. We bought a 300 cow dairy, so we have the Wisconsin milk. Why don't we make it in our own cheese? And that's actually how the whole cheese started a little bit. But it was a nice small building to start with cheese making and get some skills. In 2013, actually, we moved to this location. We built this barn first, and February 2014 we started making our first batch of cheese on this location. We have around 400 cows, and about 80% is Holstein. We got maybe 5% Brown Swiss, and then we get Swedish Red. We got just Red Holstein, and then we start doing some crossbreeding with Jersey on the heifers. Well, every day you get almost a calf. It's actually a non-stop business, 24/7. Well, it's always something. Our husband is really good. He knows almost every cow, and he knows if I ask who's the nicest cow, and he says this is the nice cow. I do a lot of feeding, and I see him. I rely totally on him. Well, but if I need to know something about the cows, I ask him. And it's an open stall barn, so the main thing is a little bit, we like to show the people what we're doing here so they can still see also cows from outside. I think it's important for the people to show them what you're doing. So, but the barn is just an insulated barn with curtains. We got alley scrapers to get rid of the manure, sand bedding to make the most comfortable area for the cow, fans to keep them cool in the summer, the back scratchers, and they are the nicest thing. Everybody loves them. Because it's just automatic, you can just go underneath and it scratches the back and get rid of all the hair. To help us out a little bit with managing, that we can focus just on a few cows, we got activity collars. They actually monitor the activity from the cows so we can find out if they're in heat or not. And they can do also rumination, so actually they count how much time they spend on the headlocks, how much time they spend laying down, how much they're chewing. And that, if they off from what they normally do, it gives an attention. Actually, it's on the computer screen, you see just a few cows, then you don't have to focus on all the cow all at once. At 4:30 I am on the farm, and that is the nicest time. It's just quiet. And then feeding starts around 6 o'clock, we start feeding. We got a couple different groups. We got a high group, a low group, and a fresh cow group, and then we get 2 different dry cow groups. The high groups, they get a high energy diet, a lot of corn silage. It's an easy growing crop, easy to manage, and some grass silage in it. To get a certain amount of forage you need in a diet to keep cows healthy, to get still the amount of milk that you want, and also the components. So corn silage, we got grass silage, dry corn, we got gluten, wet gluten, and then kind of a protein mix. And then we got feed some whey from a different cheese plant actually. The low cows, they get a little bit less energy in that they get all the same ingredients but less. The dry cows, is a big part is the straw. It's just a high straw diet, corn silage with some minerals, but it's based on a low calcium, so they don't run in issues when they're calving. We worked a little bit with the people from conservation to do it right, and so you don't lose any soil, you don't lose any nutrients, to keep everything healthy. You're trying to do it all together, and that it turns out all good.
Marieke Gouda stands for farmstead. That means that we get the milk from this farm and we only get the milk from this farm. So it's a closed herd. At this point, where half of our milk production goes into our cheese, and we hope to expand, hopefully still this year, to make all the milk into a bundle of joy, I would say. It's all one basic recipe, and then as it's young and creamy in the beginning, and then it gets sharper and complexer as it ages. So even in the plain flavors, we have a variety just of that one basic recipe. As you age it, it gets a completely different cheese. But then in the production room, right before we pump the curd into the drain table, we add different flavors to it. But in general, we have about 20 steady flavors. It starts already right away in the cheese fat. So when the milk comes in, Gouda is a water wash curd. So what we do is after the rennet coagulates the milk, we start cutting it and you get the liquid and the solid part being the curd and the liquid part being the whey. You drain the whey and we add water to it to start washing the curds. And with cheddar, you let the cheddar curds ripen in the whey. So that's a different process. Some Gouda cheesemakers wash it once or twice. You can play with the temperature of the water, the length of the wash, how much water you add to it. Also the cultures is different with cheddar and Gouda. And then you pump it into the drain table, you cut blocks out of it and you put it in a round mold where it goes under the press for 2 hours and you get a wheel. So the shape is already different. Then with cheddar you add salt in, and with Gouda you don't. You let the cheese soak up its own salt in the brine. So it goes for 2.5 days, 60 hours in the brine. And then it comes here in this aging room where you see all the cheeses, and we age our cheeses with a para coating, so we don't vacuum pack what is different already. We paint on by a hand brush. We put a para coating on. It's like a paint, but the paint dries up like a plastic rind around it. As the cheese ages, it will let some moisture go through it. That's why we have to flip our cheeses all the time. We clean it with water and vinegar and we flip it. All the cheeses get flipped twice a week, and then the fresh cheese is the first 14 days every day. So very intense. There's a lot of love and tender care afterwards. Our aging room is between 50 and 55 and the humidity is about 75%. So it's a completely different way of aging. So we age it 60 days. So it's already a little bit more where cheddar you could eat it right away the same day, of course. I wanted to be so close as possible to the traditional cheeses. So our equipment is from Holland, our cultures are from Holland. We use the good Wisconsin milk, but we also have some of our herbs. Most of our herbs come from Holland. There is one that I tried in Holland and it's called the fenugreek Gouda, and that's how we got our idea to start making fenugreek into our cheese. And it gives a kind of a nutty maple syrup flavor to it. Very delicious. I think that flavor we kind of did better than I tasted in Holland even. So even my dad said so. And that says a lot when my dad says so. In 2011, I was the first female cheesemaker to win the Wisconsin State Fair. We also were the first female outstanding farmer to win that competition, and then in the last 8 years we were 5 times in the top 3 at the US Cheese Championship, which is a big accomplishment, and then we were 3 times in the top 10 of the World Cheese Competition, and then 1 time in our aged Gouda category at the World Cheese Competition with all the Dutch. We won the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd and the 1st place. To make an aged raw milk cheese is very hard. And then to win that against the Dutch from Holland kind of proves that they really don't send their best cheeses overseas. So I always said to everybody that it's a Gouda discovered in a tiny little town in Holland called Gouda, and find out later that there is not 1 pound of Gouda produced in the town called Gouda. So what happened is all these farms around it, they were making cheese. They would go to the market in Gouda, and that's where they would sell it, and that's where it's called Gouda. The wheel, the shape of the cheese. In the earlier days, when they would transport the wheels from one harbor to the other harbor, instead of walking down the plank, they would roll the cheese. Here in Wisconsin, we are called cheeseheads. So in Holland, we are called cheeseheads too. But the reason why we are called cheeseheads there is that in the earlier days, when the blocks would go in the round molds, they were made out of wood, and when the Dutch would go to war, they would use the wooden helmet on their hat. Not sure how bulletproof they were, but we had a very high survival rate apparently.
Trying to find something what you love and make that in something successful, and to have that addict to work, and that's not easy, but you have to start somewhere.
Cheese has brought me so many things, and personally I have a different point of view about failure than Rolf has, and that has kept us going through all those years, because I think if you have an idea and you really want it, just start it.
I didn't know otherwise what to think about than just dairying. Well, I was in the Netherlands, we had a 60 cow dairy there. I love just everything. Well, just the cows, the part of the people management. It's not all the easiest part, but if it falls together into the right thing, then then it feels good.
The people, definitely the people that I work with showed me a lot of passion and dedication, and I learned so many wonderful people. I grew myself a lot, and it made me a better person.